This is Warrior Kid Podcast number 27, Ask Uncle Jake. This podcast is based on the 3 Way of the Warrior Kid books. The first one, Way of the Warrior Kid, Wimpy to Warrior, the Navy SEAL Way. The second one, Mark's Mission. And now, the third one, Where There's a Will. The books are about young Mark, who faces a lot of problems that kids everywhere face. But Mark gets help solving those problems from his Uncle Jake, who was a Navy SEAL and who stays with Mark in the summertime. And this podcast is usually for kids to hear some more lessons from Uncle Jake and also to get the chance to ask Uncle Jake questions. But today we have a guest on the podcast by the name of Jason Gardner. Like Uncle Jake, Jason Gardner was a Navy SEAL. He was in the SEAL teams for 30 years. And he also has some warrior kids of his own. So I thought it would be nice to bring him on and ask him some questions. So, Jason, thank you for coming on to the Warrior Kid Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
And I've got some questions for you. The first question I want to ask you is, did you have any fears when you were a kid growing up? And if you did have fears, how did you overcome them?
Sure. I used to be terrified, and I'm still a little bit nervous about heights. And when I say heights, that's like even climbing up on the jungle gym or the monkey bars when I was a kid would make me really nervous and fearful. And it was something that I had to do a little bit at a time so I could play at those monkey bars and then get over it enough so I could do all the stuff that a SEAL does. And on top of being afraid of heights, I was also really afraid of the dark. And at first I would go to bed and have a flashlight and I would have it on, and then it would be enough for me just to have that flashlight in my bedroom, but I wouldn't have to turn it on. And I just got braver and braver, just exposing myself to a little bit more of those things that I was scared of until they don't scare me anymore. But hey, heights still make me nervous. And I still can get up on stuff and do those monkey bars and jungle gyms. And as a Navy SEAL, had to jump out of airplanes, and I was just really careful.
Yes, I would say definitely if you're in the SEAL teams, you need to overcome fear of height and fear of dark. Because I know you and I spent much of our careers in very high places, like sliding down ropes coming out of helicopters, or jumping out of airplanes. And then we definitely spent a lot of time in the dark. And if you're scared of those things, you got to figure out a way to overcome those fears. Those are good ways to do it. All right, let me ask you another question. In the Warrior Kid books, as you know, Mark has his Uncle Jake to help him overcome some of his problems. When you were growing up, did you have someone like Uncle Jake in your life to help you?
I sure did. Coach McCoolix, who was my water polo coach, was a lot like Uncle Jake. He was in really good shape. He was really smart. He was one of the English teachers at my high school. And he was someone I really looked up to and respected. And he gave me direction, but he didn't cut me any slack. And I respected him for that. And so he was kind of like my Uncle Jake.
What do you mean he didn't cut you any slack?
So when I did stuff that was wrong or I could do better at it, he would let me know straight away.
So if you were taking a class and your grades weren't all that great, would he say, "Hey, don't worry about it. That's fine"?
Nope. He would say, "Hey, get over here, knucklehead." And he'd actually say, "You need help studying," and help me out. Made sure I got good grades and made sure I was a good member of my water polo team.
That's good to have the Uncle Jake out there, or the water polo coach that's going to help you out. All right. What about, I know you got kids of your own, and I know that you also help out at the school and stuff. Mm-hmm. What advice do you have for kids that want to be on the Warrior Kid path?
So it's real important for them to look at the code, because everything's laid out right there for them. And so when you read the book, you can be real fired up, and for a couple days, maybe even a week, you can be on the path, but after a while, you can slip off of it. So if you could copy down that code and put it up on your wall and then look at it every day, and it can be a reminder to help you keep on the path and keep doing, squared away stuff so you're a good warrior kid. And one of my favorite rules is number 5, where, make sure that you treat everyone with respect and help out people who need it.
That's a great rule to follow. Now, another thing that comes with being on the warrior kid path, and I think this is a hard one to stay on the path for a lot of kids, and that is trying to eat good foods. Now, as a SEAL, and even now, just as a person, how important do you think it is to eat good foods? And by good foods, I think we all know I'm talking about healthy foods, or as we call them in the warrior kid world, strong foods.
I like it. Strong foods are going to make you stronger. Unfortunately, a lot of the sweets and candies, they taste good, but they're not good for you. And so you're growing fast. You want to stay healthy. You need to put good fuel in your body. And that's why it's important to eat healthy.
Do you ever fall off the path and eat something that's not completely a strong food?
Absolutely.
What's your favorite weak food to eat?
German chocolate cake is basically my kryptonite.
And how often do you think it's okay that you have a piece of German chocolate cake?
Oh, maybe once a month.
Okay, there you go. I think my favorite weak food is mint chocolate chip milkshakes. I could eat one every day, but if I ate one every day, that would not be on the path.
No.
And I would not be strong. I would, in fact, be weak. But I think once a month, sounds like a pretty good amount per month that you can go ahead and have something that just tastes really good, but it's not actually good for you. Be careful of those weak foods. All right. I know you love to read. I know you read a ton of books. What was your favorite book to read when you were a kid?
Fox in Socks.
I don't even know what that is.
That is a Dr. Seuss book. It's all laid out in rhymes.
Okay.
And it was actually the first book that I learned to read with when I was a kid. And when I was a kid, they had these books where you had the book and then there was a record that played, and it would read out what the book was and give you a ding. You'd turn the page, and I've read that book thousands of times.
Fox with socks.
Fox in Socks.
Fox in Socks.
Yeah, it's all rhyming. It's crazy.
Okay. What about as you got a little bit older?
Now that I'm older, my favorite books, and it's a trilogy, is Lord of the Rings. And what I love about these books is that it's a classic good versus evil. It has great examples of people forming friendships that normally wouldn't be friends, and examples of people being really, really brave that you normally wouldn't expect to be brave. It's kind of a timeless classic, I think.
How old do you think a kid would have to be to read that series?
Probably around 10 or 12.
And what is the difference between reading the book and just seeing the movie?
So when you read the book, you're able to get so much more that they aren't able to put out in just a 2-hour movie. And you're also able to use your imagination. Because a movie, everything is just fed to you and you're not able to use your imagination. And that's another thing that I really enjoyed about Lord of the Rings. It has all kinds of fantasy type characters and different monsters and heroes and wizards. And so you're really able to engage your imagination and think it through.
Reading is probably the best way to get smarter. The more you read, the smarter you are going to get. The more you read, the more words you know. The more words you know, the more you can understand. The more words you know, the better you can communicate with other people. The better you can communicate with other people, the better leader you are going to be. So read as much as you can. That is the best exercise for your brain, especially when you're young. All right. Now, since we're talking about reading and we just talked about movies a little bit too, do you have a favorite superhero? Or maybe even a group of superheroes?
I do. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy are my favorite group of superheroes. They're really, really fun. They're also flawed. It's sometimes hard to identify with superheroes when they're perfect. And my favorite thing about the Guardians of the Galaxy is, even though they're not biologically related, and not even the same species, they have a very tight sense of family. And that's important, because you don't have to be related to somebody to consider them family. And I have many friends who I feel like they're the same as family. And so the limiting factor isn't whether you're related to someone. You can still have a sense of family with people who you're friends with and you trust.
Yeah, and I really like the fact that you mentioned that the heroes in that series are flawed. And just to make sure everyone understands what that means that the heroes in that story, they're not perfect. And guess what? No one is perfect. Everyone has little things that are wrong with them. Sometimes they have big things that are wrong with them. Sometimes we make mistakes. And that's just the way life is. No one is perfect. So what you have to do is work hard, overcome what you can, and then you find a way to deal with some of the problems that you have. That's what life is. No one is going to be perfect, but you can't let that keep you down. You can't let not being perfect keep you from being a superhero. All right, let me ask you one more question. How do you react, or what do you do when someone is rude to you or mean to you? What do you do? Or what did you do when you were a kid?
When someone was rude to me or mean to me when I was a kid, when I didn't know any better, and I did this a lot as an adult too, was I would return their rudeness with rudeness and their meanness with meanness. And that's just not moving in the right direction. It actually takes more strength to be kind to someone that's rude or mean. And it's important to understand that those people are probably being rude or mean, maybe because they're in some kind of pain, or because they just have a low self-worth.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I tried to point out when I wrote Mark's Mission. Mm-hmm. Was the fact that Nathan James, who was a kid who was definitely mean, and he was a kind of bully that a lot of people don't think of that kind of bully. They think of a bully as someone that pushes you around or punches you in the arm or bothers you in a physical way. But sometimes an even worse kind of bully is the one that says really mean things to people. And so what I wanted people to realize is the lesson that you just talked about, is that a lot of times when people are being mean, they're acting out because they are having a hard time in their life. And that is exactly what is happening with Nathan James. So what you're talking about is exactly what Uncle Jake told Mark to do to deal with Nathan James. Instead of being mean back to someone, and if you remember in the beginning of that book, Mark actually wants to fight Nathan James. He actually wants to fight him. And Uncle Jake explains to him, okay, if that's what you want to do, first you need to figure out why he's being mean. And as you just pointed out, and as you learn in the book, Nathan James has a pretty tough life. And what he needs more than someone being mean to him is someone being nice to him and someone being his friend. And that helps him out a lot. And when you help people out, trust me, when you help other people out, you will get help yourself, and you will feel better, and your whole life will be better.
It takes greater strength to return a frown with a smile. And so since I'm always striving to be the strongest person I can, that's the way I like to lean. And when I formulate it to myself in my mind that this is the strong thing to do when someone's rude or mean, is to be nice to them in return, then I find it's easier to do that and overcome that urge to be mean back to them.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Jason, those are some great pointers that you gave us all today. Thank you for coming on the Warrior Kid podcast and sharing some of the things that you've been through in your life. Every kid faces problems. It's just the way it is. But the problems that you face can be overcome. And that's all we have for this Warrior Kid podcast. And if you want to get one of the Warrior Kid books, you can get them from warriorkid.com. You can also get the Mikey and the Dragons book from Amazon.com. And if you want a Warrior Kid t-shirt or Warrior Kid Jiu-Jitsu rash guard, you can get them at jockostore.com. And if you start jiu-jitsu, which I definitely recommend, you need a jiu-jitsu gi for kids, you can get one at originmaine.com. That's also a place where you can get some Warrior Kid mulk, which is a strong food that tastes delicious and makes you healthy. Also, if you want a Warrior Kid picture for your wall, go to flipsidecanvas.com and you can get the Warrior Kid picture for your wall. So thanks for listening, and thanks for reading all the books. And remember the lessons that you learned from Jason Gardner. And I think the most important one is not only to be nice, but also write your Warrior Kid code down and hang it up on the wall and read it every day so that you can see it, so that you can read it, and so that you can live that code. Now go out there and train hard, study hard, work hard, get after it, and be a Warrior Kid.